So, I was thinking about Taiga Fujimura, the character from Fate Stay Night. And a lot of people who only watched the anime adaptation of Unlimited Blade Works, they might not realize that her role in the visual novel is considerably expanded. And, that's the case for a lot of characters in the visual novel. They just have a lot more to say and do because there's a lot more space to tell the story, I guess. But Taiga, in particular, gets cut out in this unavoidable way where she just has to be pushed to the sidelines. Because, you may know this, most of Taiga's scenes in Fate Stay Night are in the form of these Tiger Dojo scenes, which are like these buddy comedy scenes with Taiga and Ilya. And, they play at the end of a branch wherever you make a decision in the visual novel that was dying or a bad end. And obviously, there's no way to adapt these tiny branches to a single linear anime narrative. So she has to get cut out. And that's unfortunate, but understandable. But it's really unfortunate because Taiga has this really interesting function in the visual novel. And a lot of people don't realize that. Maybe even some visual novel readers. I know at least a couple visual novel readers that don't like the Tiger Dojos. They skip over them, haven't given them a single thought. Just because, I can understand why. It's this comedy scene. It's totally tonally discordant. Doesn't make a lot of sense if at first, right? Why this serious story just ended in a death. Usually of the main character. Why we're suddenly switching over to this irreverent, self-referential, fourth wall breaking scene. But there's a reason for the Tiger Dojo's existence. In the very first Tiger Dojo, you die and Taiga says, "Oh, too bad, but good for you, you're at the Tiger Dojo, and this is the most important part of Fate Stay Night," and that's obviously facetious. But if we scale that back, I think you could make the argument that it's a integral part of the story, necessary even to Shiro's character. And think about who Shiro is for a second. He's a double orphan. First he lost his parents in the Fuki fire, very traumatizing. He has PTSD. Then his adoptive father, Kiritsugu, died from his perspective at the time was just random ass heart failure or aneurysm or whatever, and that left him depressed. So now the kid's traumatized and depressed. This Shiro's like a teenager at this point. He's a wreck. He's got to be like a pissy, moody teenager, and you can't really blame him, right? At least that's how I imagine it. So then you kind of ask, like, what's Taiga's role in this? She's like the only person around Shiro at the time. She sort of grew up with him. She was sort of an older sister. And then she sort of becomes kind of his mother. But, they're really not that close familially. I mean, they're close, but, they joke about getting married because Taiga has no prospects and Shiro would just do it. And, there's a really awesome doujin where they do get married, but I digress. Anyway, so the point is they're not quite family. But, she's also his teacher. So she's kind of this maternal teacher figure. And I think that's important. I want to talk about one more scene that I think will tie it all together. There's this early scene where Shiro is having a nightmare of the fire. And he's like, I run, and then I collapse, and then the person who saved me is there. But the dream ends before we see who, at this point, we presume is Kiritsugu. We don't see Kiritsugu that day, or any, memory of him. Instead, Shiro wakes up and talks to Taiga over breakfast. And he recalls how Taiga helped him through to have lots of nightmares like this. And she always used to be able to tell when he was in a bad mood because of his trauma. And I think that is the bond. Taiga is one part caretaker, but she's also what made Shiro into what he is today to a certain extent. Is the teacher part, the dojo sensei. That form, right, of Shiro running and failing and being picked up by the one who saved him. But the one who saved him wasn't really Kiritsugu. Yes, Kuretsugu rescued him from the fire. But Shiro wasn't really saved at that point, was he? He's still dealing with all that. He's still got all that trauma. And it's not really till the end of the story that he's freed from it. It's Taiga who sort of nurtured him and taught him how to deal with that stuff, how to fight back. I think that's why every time you fail in the visual novel, you come back to Taiga. It's the same thing as that nightmare leading into the breakfast. It's Shiro trying and failing, getting picked up by Taiga, given some encouragement, some pointers, and moving on forward. And sure enough, when you finally reach a good end, you don't see Taiga again. You've graduated her class, so there's no need for another Tiger Dojo. And that's really her role in the story. This guiding and sustaining force for Shiro, and by extension, the reader as well. And she's kind of in the background. She's certainly a minor character, but I think this function's kind of interesting. Not only because it's nice. It's nice that this minor character has a theme behind her. It's also kind of cool that it's told through what is essentially a mechanical metaphor. Fate and visual novels generally, they tend to get shit on for not really being games. But hey, here's a concrete example of how a simple branching story, just the act of choosing a path, can do interesting things on a mechanical level. Anyways, that's all I got. Fate Stay Night. Taiga Fujimura. Yeah.